When I asked about the wedding, she didn't even look up from her phone. She just said, "It's over now." Her voice didn't shake. It didn't sound angry. It was calm, too calm. And that calm broke something inside me. I remember standing there in her kitchen, my hands still wet from washing the dishes. The smell of coffee filled the room, but it suddenly felt heavy, like the air had forgotten how to move. She walked past me, her eyes distant, like she wasn't even there anymore. And that's when I knew. Whatever we had built, whatever dream I thought we were living, had already ended long before she said those words. I used to imagine her wedding day since she was little, my only daughter. The white dress, the smile, the proud father walking her down the aisle. But instead, all I got was that one quiet sentence. "It's over now." It wasn't anger that hit me first. It was confusion. Because just a few months ago, we were planning everything together: flowers, guests, food, the whole thing. She had picked the dress. We had laughed over cake samples. I thought she was happy. I thought we were all happy. So when she said it, I didn't know whether to ask why or just hold her. But I didn't do either. I just stood there, like time had stopped for both of us. And when she walked into her room and closed the door, the sound of it echoed through the house, slow, final, and full of all the words we didn't say. That night, I sat on the porch alone. The wind was cold. I could hear a train in the distance, its horn low and lonely. And I kept asking myself, when did I stop being part of her story? Because somehow, in trying to protect her, I'd missed the part where she learned how to keep secrets from me. And that's where it all began: the silence, the distance, and the truth that would later break my heart in ways I didn't even see coming. I still remember the day my daughter was born. It was a Thursday morning in early May, the kind of day when the sun feels gentle, like it's trying not to wake the world too fast. Her mother held her close, whispering her name for the first time, "Lily." And I swear, when I looked at her tiny face, I thought I saw my whole future smiling back at me. Back then, we lived in a small house outside of Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy. Just a two-bedroom home with old wallpaper and creaky floors that always made noise when you tried to sneak through the hallway. But it was ours, and every inch of it was filled with laughter, or at least, that's how I remember it. Lily grew up fast. She was one of those kids who could find joy in the simplest things: making mud pies after rain, chasing fireflies in the summer, drawing little hearts on every wall she could reach. Her mom used to scold her for that, but I never did. I'd just laugh and say, "Let her draw, hun. Maybe she'll be an artist someday." And sometimes, when I came home late from work, I'd find Lily asleep on the couch, crayon still in her hand, a half-finished rainbow on the paper beside her. Life wasn't perfect, but it felt right. I worked long hours at a repair shop, fixing engines and brakes. Her mom, Sandra, worked part-time at the library downtown. We didn't have much money, but we had each other, and somehow that made us rich. Every Sunday, we'd go to the park near the old river bridge. Lily would run ahead, her little red shoes flashing in the sunlight. Sandra and I would sit on the bench, sharing a cup of coffee, just watching her. I remember saying once, "You think she'll ever slow down?" Sandra smiled and said, "Not a chance. She's gonna outgrow both of us before we blink." And she was right. High school came faster than I expected. Lily wasn't just smart, she was kind. The kind of girl who remembered birthdays, who stayed behind after class to help teachers clean up. She volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend. Everyone loved her. And I used to think, how did I get so lucky to be her dad? Then college came. That's when I first started noticing the silence between us. It wasn't anything she did, it was just distance. The kind that creeps in quietly, like fog rolling over an empty street. She went to a small university about 2 hours away. Every Sunday night, I'd call her. At first, she'd pick up every time, telling me about classes, roommates, and funny things that happened in the dorms. But as months passed, the calls grew shorter. Sometimes she'd text instead of calling, and then sometimes nothing at all. Sandra said it was normal. "She's just busy, honey," she'd tell me, folding laundry with that calm smile of hers. College changes people. She's finding her own life. But I wasn't ready for that. I still thought of Lily as the little girl who drew rainbows and called me daddy with her whole heart. Then one Thanksgiving, she brought someone home. A tall young man with dark hair, sharp eyes, and a polite smile. "Dad, Mom," she said, holding his hand. "This is Mark." I remember trying to act calm, even though my chest felt tight. He shook my hand, said, "Nice to meet you, sir," in that clean, careful voice people use when they want to make a good impression. and I liked him, at least, I tried to. He helped Sandra set the table, laughed at my old stories, even offered to wash the dishes after dinner. But something about him, I don't know. He was polite, but he wasn't warm. Like everything he said had been rehearsed. Still, Lily looked happy, and that's all I cared about. The years that followed went by like pages flipping too fast. She graduated, got a job at a marketing firm in Cleveland, and then, one evening, my phone rang. It was her. "Dad," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Mark proposed." I remember sitting down slowly, trying to process it. My little girl, engaged. I smiled, even though something deep inside me trembled. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said. "Congratulations." And I meant it. Or at least, I wanted to. The next few months were all about wedding plans. Venues, invitations, dresses, colors, things I didn't know much about, but I pretended to. Sandra was thrilled. Every evening, the two of them sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by magazines and notebooks. Sometimes they'd argue about flowers or guest lists, but they always ended up laughing. And me? I just watched them, two women I loved more than anything, building a dream together. I thought that dream would last forever, but as the wedding day got closer, I started to notice the quiet again. Not the warm, comfortable kind, the uneasy kind, the kind where words hang in the air, waiting to be said but never spoken. I asked Lily once if everything was okay. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. "Yeah, Dad just a little tired," she said. "Work's been crazy." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about her tone, that forced brightness, it reminded me of someone pretending not to cry. Then Sandra got sick. It started with headaches, then fatigue. After a few tests, the doctor said it was early-stage lymphoma. It hit us like a truck, but she stayed strong, even through chemo. And Lily, she visited every weekend. She held her mom's hand, made her laugh, brought her favorite soup. Mark came a few times too, but not often. Said he was busy with work. That's when I started to see the small cracks in their relationship. Little things, like how he never looked at her when she spoke, or how she'd go quiet whenever his name came up. Still, I didn't say anything. It wasn't my place. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Then, a few months later, after Sandra passed away, Lily stopped coming home. She called once after the funeral to say she needed some space. I understood. We were all hurting in our own ways. But weeks turned into months. And the next time I saw her was that day, standing in her kitchen, phone in her hand, saying, "It's over now." After that day in her kitchen, I couldn't stop thinking about her words. "It's over now." The way she said it still echoed in my head for days, calm, like she'd already cried enough to run out of tears. I didn't push her to explain. I didn't ask what happened with Mark. Instead, I did what I'd always done, waited. Because that's what parents do when they don't want to lose what little connection they still have left. But waiting turned into worrying. Days went by without hearing from her. And then one night, just as I was about to head to bed, my phone buzzed. "Hey, Dad." The message said, "Can we talk tomorrow?" That was it. No details. No heart emojis like she used to send. Just a plain message, cold and short. I wrote back, "Of course, sweetheart, anytime." But she never called the next day. 2 days later, I decided to drive to her place. She lived about 45 minutes away, in a small apartment complex near downtown Cleveland. When I got there, I saw moving boxes stacked near the door. Her name was still on the mailbox, but half the furniture was gone. When she opened the door, she looked tired. Not just physically, tired in a way that comes from carrying too much for too long. Her eyes had lost that light I used to know. I smiled anyway. "Hey, kiddo," I said softly. "Thought I'd drop by and see how you're holding up." She hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment looked empty. A few boxes near the couch, her coffee mug on the counter, a framed photo of her and her mom turned face down. I noticed that right away. "You moving somewhere?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "Yeah, just needed a change." "Is this about Mark?" I asked gently. She froze for a moment, then sighed. "Yeah, Dad, it's about Mark." I waited, but she didn't say more. So I just stood there, letting the silence breathe between us. After a few minutes, she finally sat down and said, "He called off the wedding." I didn't know what to say. I thought she'd be angry or maybe broken. But she wasn't. She just looked empty. "He said he wasn't ready," she continued, "that he needed time to figure out his life." Her voice cracked just slightly, enough for me to hear the truth behind the words. I sat beside her and reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't hold on either. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I said quietly. You didn't deserve that. She nodded, eyes still fixed on the floor. It's weird, she whispered. I thought I'd be heartbroken, but mostly, I just feel relieved. That word caught me off guard. Relieved? I asked. Yeah, she said, finally looking at me. Dad, it wasn't working. I kept trying to make it right, but every time I smiled, it felt fake. Every time I told him I loved him, something in me hesitated. I thought it was just wedding stress, but deep down I knew. I didn't interrupt. I let her speak, really speak, for the first time in months. He started changing after Mom died, she went on. He didn't like when I spent weekends with you. He said I was avoiding him. He wanted me to move farther from here, start over. He said your house reminded me too much of her. I swallowed hard. I didn't know he'd said that, and something about it made my stomach twist. So, when I asked about the wedding and he said he needed space, I just said okay, she said softly. And that was that. We sat there in silence for a while. The rain outside had turned into a steady drizzle. I could hear cars passing by on the wet street below, and for the first time in a long while, I realized my little girl wasn't little anymore. She'd learned how to survive heartbreak quietly, without tears, without drama, without anyone to lean on. And somehow, that hurt more than anything. After that day, I started visiting her more often. I'd bring groceries, fix little things around her place, try to get her to eat home-cooked meals. She'd smile politely, thank me, and then go back to work. She was working long hours at the firm, maybe too long. One evening, when I stopped by unannounced, I found her still at her desk at 9 p.m., laptop open, the glow from the screen washing over her tired face. Lily, I said softly, you need to rest. She didn't look up. I'm fine, Dad, she murmured. You've been saying that a lot lately. She finally met my eyes. I have to be fine. Something about the way she said that made me ache, because I knew that voice. It was the same one Sandra used when she was trying to hide her pain from us during chemo. Strong, calm, selfless, even when everything inside was falling apart. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to be strong all the time, but I didn't. I just stood there, watching her work, wishing I could carry even half of what she was carrying. Then one morning, about 2 months later, she showed up at my house. She hadn't been there since the funeral. When I opened the door, she was holding a cardboard box, full of old photos, letters, and one framed picture of Sandra smiling in the garden. I didn't want to keep these in the apartment, she said softly. It didn't feel right. We went inside, and she placed the box on the kitchen table. Then she just stood there, looking around the house. The same walls she grew up in, the same couch where she'd watched cartoons every Saturday morning. Her eyes softened. It still smells like Mom's coffee, she said quietly. I smiled. That's because I still make it the same way. We both laughed a little. It felt good, natural, even. For a brief moment, it felt like the years had rolled back, like we were just two people trying to fill an empty house with warmth again. She stayed for dinner that night. I made her favorite, grilled chicken and mashed potatoes, the way Sandra used to. We sat by the window, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about work, her new apartment, a coworker who made her laugh. But somewhere between the laughter and the silence, I realized something. She wasn't over Mark, not yet. She was pretending to be okay because she didn't want me to worry. When she left that night, she hugged me tighter than usual, and as she drove away, I stood on the porch, watching the taillights fade, thinking about how love, whether romantic or parental, always leaves a little bruise when it fades. Weeks passed, and Lily began to find her rhythm again. She called me more often, sent pictures of her cooking disasters, little updates about her life. She even started going out with friends again. I thought maybe, just maybe, things were finally turning around. But life has a strange way of testing you right when you think you're healing. One afternoon, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. It was her office. The woman on the line said, "Mr. Walker, your daughter fainted at work. She's at the hospital now." My heart dropped. I didn't even grab my jacket. I just drove. When I got there, she was sitting up in the hospital bed, pale but smiling weakly. "Dad," she said softly, "I'm okay." The doctor explained it was exhaustion, overwork, dehydration, stress. Nothing serious, but a clear sign she'd been pushing too hard. That night, I stayed by her bedside, holding her hand as she slept. I thought about Sandra, about how she used to worry that Lily would grow up trying to take care of everyone else before herself. And now here she was, doing exactly that. When she woke up the next morning, I told her, "Lily, You can't keep living like this. She nodded, eyes full of quiet understanding. I know, Dad, she said. I just didn't want to feel anything anymore. Working made it easier not to think. I brushed her hair back gently. You don't have to run from pain, I said softly. Sometimes, it's the only thing that reminds us we're still human. She smiled faintly, then looked away. There was a long pause, then she whispered, You know what's strange, Dad? I still check my phone sometimes, expecting a message from him, even though I know it's not coming. I didn't have an answer for that, because I'd been doing the same thing for months, waiting for her to call, just to say she was okay. We were both waiting for something that wasn't coming back. Scene Q. Soft morning light through blinds. Lily sits by a hospital window, her father beside her, both silent but closer than before. That day changed something between us. We didn't talk much about Mark again. We didn't need to. Some things you just let fade quietly, not because they don't matter, but because you finally accept that they can't be fixed. Over the next few months, she moved into a new apartment, started taking art classes again, the same thing she loved as a kid. She'd send me little sketches sometimes, saying, It's not great, but it helps me think. And each one reminded me of those old crayon rainbows from years ago. Life started to look gentler again. Not perfect, but peaceful. Until one day, I found something that would open up a truth I wasn't ready for. Cue sound. Drawer opening, rustle of papers. The camera slowly zooms in on a letter addressed to Dad. It was a letter, hidden inside one of Sandra's old books that Lily had brought back months earlier. The handwriting was Lily's. I unfolded it carefully, hands trembling just slightly. And when I read the first line, my breath caught. Dad, if you ever find this, I need you to know something about Mark and about me. The letter was tucked inside one of Sandra's favorite books, a collection of poems she used to keep by her bedside. The pages were soft and yellowed from years of reading, the corners bent where she'd stopped and started over again. When I found it, I wasn't looking for anything. I was just dusting off the shelf one quiet afternoon, trying to fill the silence that had been hanging in the house since Lily stopped coming around. I remember holding that envelope in my hand, just staring at my name written in her handwriting. Dad. The word alone felt heavy, like she had written it with more than ink, like she had written it with a part of herself she'd been hiding for too long. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same place where Sandra used to read the morning paper and where Lily once spilled orange juice every other day. I unfolded the paper carefully and began to read. Dad, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't find the right time to tell you everything in person. You've always been my safe place, but I didn't want you to look at me with pity or guilt. I just wanted you to know the truth, the real reason I called off the wedding. My hands shook a little as I turned the page. It wasn't just that Mark said he wasn't ready. That's what I told you because it was easier than the truth. The truth is, Dad, he wasn't kind. Not the way you think. I felt my stomach tighten. At first, he was perfect, charming, thoughtful. He made me laugh. He told me he wanted to take care of me, and for a while, I believed him. But after a few months, things started to change. He began to get upset about little things. The way I dressed, the way I talked to my coworkers, how often I visited you and Mom. He said I was too close to my family, that I wasn't independent enough. He didn't like when I talked about you, said you were too protective. At first, I thought he was joking. But then, he started checking my phone, questioning where I was, who I was with. I stopped reading for a moment. My chest felt heavy, my throat dry. Outside, I could hear the faint sound of wind chimes, the same ones Lily had hung years ago. And for a second, I swear I could almost hear Sandra's voice whispering, Keep reading. So I did. When Mom got sick, I thought he'd be there for me. But he got distant, cold. He said I was too emotional, that I should focus on him instead of wasting all my energy on sadness. The night before Mom's last treatment, he told me he wasn't sure he could handle my grief. He said he wanted someone who could move on quickly, someone strong. That word, strong, started to sound like a punishment. I had to set the letter down for a moment. My eyes burned. I couldn't believe what I was reading. She had gone through all of that, quietly, alone, while I was sitting in this very house, worrying about her being busy. She wasn't busy. She was breaking, and I didn't even see it. I picked up the letter again, my hands trembling now. After Mom passed, I didn't tell anyone how bad it had gotten. He'd get angry if I didn't answer his calls fast enough. Once, he yelled at me in a parking lot because I didn't text him back right away. A stranger had to step in and ask if I was okay. That's when I knew. That's when I realized I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, quiet, scared, smaller than I used to be. So I left. I sat back, staring at those words. So I left. 3 simple words that took her more courage than most people show in a lifetime. I told him the wedding was off. He tried to talk me out of it, said I'd regret it, said no one would ever love me the way he did. But I'd already made up my mind. And Dad, I didn't cry when he walked out. I thought I would. But instead, I felt this strange calm, like I could finally breathe again. I realized then that love isn't supposed to feel like walking on eggshells. I could almost hear her voice in those lines, steady, gentle, certain. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to blame yourself for not seeing it. I didn't want you to feel like you failed me. You didn't. You taught me what real love looks like. Dad, quiet, patient, steady. You and Mom showed me that. And that's what helped me leave. I just needed time to find myself again. Please don't be sad when you read this. I'm okay now. I promise. I'm learning to be happy again, even if it's just one small piece at a time. At the bottom of the page, she had drawn a tiny sketch. A small sunflower with the words, Mom always said they follow the light. I don't know how long I sat there. The letter blurred as tears filled my eyes. All the guilt, all the helplessness I'd been carrying, it came crashing down at once. I wanted to call her right then, to tell her I was proud of her, but I didn't want to scare her, to make her feel like she'd done something wrong by finally telling the truth. So I just sat there, holding that letter, whispering to the empty kitchen, You did good, kiddo. You did real good. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked around the house, each room holding a memory. Lily's old bedroom, the faint smell of her perfume still in the air. Sandra's quilt draped over the couch. The quiet hum of the refrigerator that always seemed louder when the house felt empty. I kept thinking about all the times I'd told her to be strong. How those words might have made her hide her pain instead of sharing it. Sometimes we don't realize how the things we say, even with love, can build invisible walls around the people we're trying to protect. A few days later, I drove to her apartment again. When she opened the door, she looked surprised. Dad? Hey, sweetheart, I said softly. I found your letter. Her face went pale for a second. You read it? She asked quietly. I did. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she sat down slowly, eyes filling with tears she didn't want to let fall. I didn't want you to find out like that, she whispered. I was going to tell you. I just couldn't bring myself to. I sat beside her, resting my hand over hers. You don't ever have to hide from me again, I said. Not now, not ever. She finally looked up, and in that moment, I saw her, really saw her. Not as my little girl anymore, but as a woman who had fought her way out of something dark and came out stronger. We sat there for a long time, no words, just quiet. The kind of silence that heals instead of hurts. After a while, she said softly, I thought you'd be disappointed. Disappointed? I repeated, shaking my head. Sweetheart, I've never been prouder. She smiled then, a small, trembling smile, but it was real. And for the first time in what felt like years, I saw that old spark in her eyes. Over the next few weeks, things changed between us. We talked more, not about the past, but about small things, movies, recipes, her art class, her new friends. She even started visiting again, helping me clean up the garden Sandra used to love. One evening, as we planted new flowers in the yard, she looked up and said, You know, Mom would have loved this. I smiled. She would have, especially the sunflowers. Lily chuckled softly. She said they were like people, always turning toward whatever light they could find. Guess she was right, I said. We stood there quietly, watching the sun dip low over the fence, painting everything gold. And I thought about that letter again, how much strength it took to write it, to face it, to heal from it. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't walking away from someone else. It's walking back toward yourself. Scene Q. Soft golden light over the garden, gentle wind rustling leaves. The music swells slightly, emotional but hopeful. That night, as she left, I hugged her and whispered, You'll be okay, Lily. You already are. She nodded against my shoulder and said, Thanks for waiting for me, Dad. And right there, I realized something. Love doesn't always have to fix everything. Sometimes it just needs to wait. After Emily left that day, the house fell into a silence I can't really describe. It wasn't the kind of quiet that feels peaceful. It was the kind that makes you aware of every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak in the hallway floor, even the sound of your own breathing. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the empty chair across from me. She had packed most of her things that morning before she spoke to me. I didn't even notice. I guess that's how blind I'd been, too caught up in what I thought life was supposed to look like. The boxes by the door were like punctuation marks at the end of a story I didn't realize had already been written. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face the day she was born. Her tiny hands, the way she held my finger like she'd never let go. And now, all these years later, I was the one holding on while she was learning how to let go. I think that's what fatherhood really is, a slow practice in learning to release the people you love most. A few days later, my ex-wife, Marlene, called me. She had heard about the breakup, and she sounded softer than usual. She said, "You need to give her space, Jack. She's hurting in her own way." I told her I knew. But knowing didn't make it any easier. So I did what I knew how to do. I fixed things. Or tried to. I started cleaning the house like she might walk back in any minute. Washed her bedsheets. Put her favorite mug next to the coffee pot. Every morning, I'd pour 2 cups of coffee out of habit. One for me, one for her. And then pour hers down the sink because she wasn't there. It was a small ritual that kept me from breaking down completely. Weeks passed. The neighbors stopped asking questions. People at the hardware store stopped giving me that sympathetic look. Life, as it does, moved on, except for me. I stayed stuck in the in-between, not sure how to move forward without the sound of her laughter echoing through this old house. Then, one morning in early spring, I found a letter in the mailbox. No return address. Just my name written in her handwriting, soft, a little shaky. I took it inside, sat at the same kitchen table, and opened it slowly, like the paper itself was fragile. Inside, it said, "Dad, I know you probably think I'm mad at you. I'm not. I just needed to breathe for a while. The wedding wasn't what I thought it would be. And the truth is, I don't think I ever loved him the way I thought I should. I stayed quiet because I didn't want to disappoint you. But I ended up disappointing myself instead. You were always my safe place, Dad. Even when we didn't talk much, I knew I could come home if I needed to. I'm just not ready yet. I need to find out who I am without the noise of everyone's expectations, including my own. Please don't blame yourself. You did your best. You always did. I love you. I'll call soon." When I finished reading, I just sat there, holding the paper against my chest. And for the first time since she left, I cried. Not the quiet kind, not the kind you hide. I cried like a father who finally understood that love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go without resentment. After that, things began to change inside me. I started walking again in the evenings, past the park where I used to push her on the swings. The first few times hurt more than I expected, but slowly the ache turned into something gentler, like a bruise healing beneath the skin. I fixed the fence in the backyard, painted the porch she used to sit on during high school summers, even cleaned out the old garage where her bike still leaned against the wall. Every nail, every brushstroke felt like a small act of forgiveness, not just toward her, but toward myself. Then, one Sunday morning in May, the phone rang. I picked it up, and it was her. "Hey, Dad," she said softly. Her voice was steady this time. "Hey, I replied. "You okay?" There was a pause, that kind of quiet where 100 things could be said, but neither of you knows where to start. Then she said, "Yeah, I think I'm better now." We talked for a long time that day. About small things, her new apartment, her job, a stray cat she'd taken in. But between every word, there was something deeper, understanding, forgiveness, love that didn't need explaining. Before hanging up, she said, "Dad, thank you for not pushing me, for not making me feel like a failure." I swallowed hard and said, "Honey, you could never fail me, not once." And I meant it with every part of my being. After that call, I realized something. Sometimes, the best way to help someone heal is to let them find their own way home, even if it takes longer than you wish. Months passed. We started talking more, once a week, then twice. She'd send pictures of sunsets from her balcony, recipes she was trying, little pieces of her life that she wanted me to see. And each message felt like a step toward something new, not the same as before, but maybe better. Then one afternoon, she surprised me. She showed up on my porch, holding 2 coffees. Same brand, same way I used to make them. She smiled, that same crooked smile she had when she lost her first tooth. "I thought we could have coffee together," she said. We sat there for hours, not saying much at first, just sipping coffee, listening to the wind move through the trees. And then she said quietly, "I think I'm finally okay, Dad. Really okay." I looked at her and saw not the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders, but a woman who had found her way through heartbreak and confusion and come out stronger on the other side. I said, "I'm proud of you, You know that? She nodded. Yeah, I think I finally believe it now. That night, after she left, I didn't feel lonely anymore. The house was still quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of memories and peace. I realized that even though the wedding never happened, something better did. We found our way back to each other, not through perfection, but through truth. And truth, I've learned, is what really holds love together. Not the ceremonies, not the plans, just the quiet understanding that even when everything falls apart, you can still come home again. A few months have passed since that day on the porch. The seasons have turned again, spring into summer, summer into something quieter. The air feels softer now. The house feels lighter too. Sometimes I still catch myself setting 2 cups of coffee in the morning, but now it makes me smile. It's not a reminder of loss anymore. It's a reminder of love, of a bond that went through fire and came out stronger, clearer, truer. Emily visits more often these days. She comes by on Sundays, brings her laundry, sits at the kitchen table like she used to. We don't talk about the wedding anymore. We talk about life, about her work, her friends, the stray cat that still refuses to leave her apartment. We laugh again, and every time she leaves, she hugs me a little longer than before. One evening not long ago, we sat outside watching the sky turn orange over the trees. She said, "You know, Dad, I thought that whole thing ruined me, but I think it saved me instead." I asked, "How's that?" She smiled. "It made me see what I really want and what I don't." I nodded, understanding in a way only time can teach you, because I had my own version of that lesson too. I learned that love doesn't always look like the stories we grow up hearing. It's not always about big moments or picture perfect endings. Sometimes it's about showing up, again and again, even when your heart feels like it's been torn in two. It's about making peace with what didn't happen, forgiving what you couldn't change, and finding joy in what still remains. That night, after she went home, I sat on the porch alone, just like I had the night she told me, "It's over now." But this time, the air didn't feel heavy. The stars looked closer, and the silence felt kind, almost like it was saying, "You did okay." I thought about all the years in between, the laughter, the arguments, the distance, the healing. And I realized something simple but powerful. We don't lose people when things fall apart. We lose them when we stop loving them in the quiet, ordinary moments that follow. Emily had found her way, and maybe, so had I. I started planting flowers in the backyard again, the same kind she loved as a little girl, marigolds and daisies. She helped me last weekend. We laughed when she spilled the soil and said, "You always said I wasn't built for gardening." And I told her, "You just